Well, the camera says I've got 25 minutes and 49 seconds. I'm going to try to do this a little bit quicker. I may break it up into different sections. And here is your captain of records. No, I'm no captain of records. I have very few. I mean, honestly, there's a few here and here and here. And if I go back the other way a little bit quick, but still. And you see more here and here and over there. You'll see some deal. I only have half of a picture. Half of my camera picture is done. Although you probably can't see this. No, there's no way. That would have been more records underneath my bed along with the subwoofer. Here's the subwoofer in front. I don't know if you can see that very well, but there it is. And then there's a subwoofer underneath my bed, where I'm actually on my bed right now. You can see my leg. And I'm sitting on top of another one. And then my speakers are over here. And those satchels are full of CDs and DVDs. And then I have another area where I have another 1,000 or 2,000. Altogether I got about 4,000 CDs. Too many. Too many. I even sell them cheap in hundreds lot and can't seem to get rid of them. If I find cheap box sets, I pick them up, and my tastes are pretty wide. And so there's Bluegrass and a Judy Garland box set, and there's a Ravi Shankar below it. And then down here, which you probably can't see very well, is more media. And I sit in front of my little TV, or actually it's a computer, and that's how I see you guys. And outside is an antenna that tries to reach a place that can, you might be able to see it through the window. It's kind of light, but that's where it's emanating from. And the guys that come out here and work out here occasionally, they'll stay in there. And so I don't have any lights on because everything glares as far as the records, and this way I can get a pretty nice picture. So let's start this. Let's start with Jane Fonda, because honestly this is probably one of the weirdest records I've got. I got it for $1. Almost everything I'm going to show you I got for $1. There's a few different places where I usually pick up stuff like this. I go out in garage sales. Right now I'm having my guitar fixed, and to be honest with you, it could cost me $1,000 or more dollars. So I'm going to probably be buying less unless I can figure out how way to do silent auctions or become a discovery service, because I sit around and in a retired way, and I look for albums internationally, and I find them. I have a lot of boards are out there, and it's all pretty much auction. There are some that sell them, right on the spot. Some I've found to be worthy of their grading system is good, but most of them are not, and you take your chances. And sometimes it's weird, the stuff they can do. So I don't know that I've ever wasted any money on it, but I've certainly not. I bought 40 or 50 albums and maybe only had a half a dozen that were actually any good to begin with, but also to my liking. And the wonderful thing is that I caught glimpses of those albums and sort of knew that they were there, although they never really showed the entire album. So, Jane Fonda, Buck. It's a double album, as it turns out. I never really looked at it before. Inside of it, see my hand maybe, is how to do it. There's music. I don't know if you can see the artist, but there's artists with the music. I didn't know that either. When you're rich and famous, I guess you can get away with a lot of stuff. So I put my records in this thing, and I keep it on top of my records usually, which is like over here. And I don't know if you can see this very well, but anyway, it's going to be the first one. This is the Blues Note, one of the few Blues Note albums I have. It's actually a rather recent 1980s. It was $1. And one of the guys that I buy from, I really picked out most of what I could like. There's still a tremendous amount of pre-65 music if you want rock stuff like that. But I'm just not into the era before the Beatles, essentially. Even the 50s rock and stuff, which I do get into to some degree. But I like all music. All music is you know, important. And what I've found and believed since I was a kid is that no matter what the genre of music, there's always someone doing something good with every kind and style of music. And that doesn't mean I get it. And if I don't get it, it's the only fault is I don't get it. And a lot of people suddenly make judgment calls and they, you know, this, that, and the other, and you're woke or whatever because they see things and things. They're fucking crazy. But anyway, I probably shouldn't say those things. But I wanted to get, that's the first one. I'm doing this in part showing you the jazz stuff because, well, guess what? You know, one of the, you know, I don't have a lot of metal. Most of my stuff is usually in the classic rock period because I was 13 in 1967. I went on my first road trip with my sister. My dad didn't want her to go completely alone while she set up going to college. And I ended up going to Houston for the first time, to Austin for the first time, and I had some adventures staying with cousins that were pretty crazy. And in any case, you know, I got into it. I was playing the stock market, and I'd made enough money to buy a new television set, a color one, for the first time. And I ran into this guy, and he talked about music, and I didn't have a lot of friends, and I thought, well, maybe this is a way for me to have more friends. So I started buying music, and I was always working. I've been working since I was 8 years old. I was taught how to work before I was even 5. And so I always had income. My parents were not in the house. My mother was not around a lot. And my dad was on the road, mostly as a peddler, picking up different kinds of things he could sell back in Brownsville to the Mexicans. And also to be able to, he bought a lot of metals, and he'd clean the metals, and he'd sell the metals. And I learned everything there was about metals, and became an industrial metal buyer until most of the industries, well, all went to Asia. First I went to Mexico. That wasn't a bad thing for me. It was a horrible thing. Even when in the 60s, I kept thinking, well, you know, if all those car guys are not working, how are they going to buy cars? There are hundreds of thousands of these people. Yeah, fucking corporations don't give a flying fuck. Excuse me, for the second fuck. Alright, so now, go to the next card. Yeah, I don't think I have to say much about these things. Just revival. Time Out was popular when I was a kid, so I've had this thing, I don't know how many times. I think I got 2 copies of it now, and 2 copies on CD, and way too many. And I learned about this guy recently from that movie they made. I think it was Best Picture of the Year, maybe, about a black guy traveling in the South with a semi-prejudiced guy from New York, and he becomes the white guy is the chauffeur. And it's a great movie, and in fact I got the movie. I like it so much. But I think Earl Grant is the name of the real person, and so I saw these for $1. They looked in great shape, and that's right, I own 2 because I saw them at the same time, so I did that. This is Modern Jazz Quartet, another group that I've known about ever since I was a kid. I always had albums by this group. I don't know why I like them so much. I haven't. A lot of these albums I haven't listened to because you can only listen to so much in a day, and I get burnt out. And I'll listen to music sometimes on CDs, sometimes on vinyl, sometimes on my hard drive, and I have several hard drives. Now I like Frank Sinatra these days in the last 15 years, I guess. And I've learned a lot of things actually from him, how to handle the mic and things like that, and know about the history more. But finding a good copy of an album that's used for 50 or 60 years, well, they don't come all the time. Well, you see them all the time, but you don't get them all the time. And I like Dean Martin a lot as well. I have a collection of DVDs, about 50 of them, mostly from his television show. back in the 60s. And again, I've seen plenty of the albums, but I don't have here's another Earl Gardner. This is a much earlier one. This is might actually be his first one. And I think, as I recall, now I don't know if you can see this, and I'll wait a couple of minutes before I show you this, but there's a tag on here, and I'll talk about that in a second. Here's some Ramsey Lewis, another guy that I always listen to, and when I see the albums and they're cheap, I get it because I've always enjoyed them. Eddie Harris is another musician that I like from the 60s, and I've had many copies of different Swift Movement is probably the one I like the most, but I always buy them. Sometimes they're not what I hope they would be. They don't have, I have a tendency to like faster moving, louder, razor thin, razor sharp, who knows. So I had this when it first came out. I'd heard shortly after Uncle Meat from Zappa came out, I heard that this guy in France had an album with King Kong on it, and I went, and the total album was for Frank Zappa, and I went, holy Jiminy Cricket, I've got to have that. So I immediately ordered it. It was great, and obviously Jean-Louis Paty liked Zappa and played in his band in the 70s, and did some great work. Carl Tauger, I actually slash the Rob, got one of my Carl Taugers when I shipped the Janis Joplin album the cover to him, and I put that and a couple other albums, but so that the Janis Joplin album cover would not bend directly and get harmed, even though it wasn't a perfect cover or anything like that. I still wanted him to get it in as good a shape as possible, and so I sent it to him, and I hope that when he sends it back, he cares to at the very least, return it in the same shape it was originally. Stanley Turrentine, another great guy I liked, another dollar album, and in fact, there's a lot of albums sort of this nature that I liked a lot. I'm a Wes Montgomery fan, though, a huge Wes Montgomery fan, and he was always probably my favorite guitar player in a lot of ways until Jeff Beck probably and Jimi Hendrix. But this is not a dollar album. This was $7 from Patrick, but it's the second movement. It's not. I listened to it the other day, and I realized why I never really. It's a great album, but it's definitely not the first movement. Second movement really sort of attempts to breach to a younger audience, and so whereas the Swiss movement, which was a live recording from them being in Europe at one of their events, was just balls to the wall playing, and it's fucking awesome. Excuse me, and that's third fuck, fourth fuck, fifth fuck. I better stop, huh? Les McCann, another great artist I liked. Mr. Stan Getz, which is on Roost Records. These are all dollar albums. Another McCann. Tyner, you can see the dollar ticket if you maybe they can get it here. So, just wanted to show you. And all these records, actually, I've played them a little bit, so they all sound good. And surprisingly, the guy gets rid of them for different reasons, and that's fine with me. So another Al Di Meola, who I got to see in Kansas. Was it Kansas? Yeah, no, it was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I got to see him, and oh God, what's her name? I've always liked the Fifth Dimension, but I don't need a lot of Fifth Dimension. So we're moving along here. I just got out of the jazz section. Now that's not all the jazz. These are just close around and surrounding me so I could get to them and kind of show a quick video, because this is very experimental. Going back to a change of genres to some degree. Fifth Dimension, I've always liked the Fifth Dimension. I don't think you need a lot of Fifth Dimension albums. A lot of the albums, one of the reasons why I love albums is because there is a, I don't know, there's a way that they put the song together. They had a limited amount of time to use to put real music on it, and there was always sort of a theme of sorts in records, and if you didn't get to hear the album in the sequence that the music was playing, then you could miss a lot. And so almost everything in CD by the 80s was the greatest hits, and you rarely got to get albums that you had, because they didn't sell enormous 42 million records like maybe Michael Jackson did, and so they didn't make copies. They just made greatest hits, and I don't always think that they made them all that well either. So I've been on this thing for like 14 minutes already, so I'm going to stop it. No, I'm not. I'm going to keep going because I'm just going to go. This was not a dollar album, but it wasn't very far from it. And it's a double album, The Birds, the Untitled. In some ways, it's like second to their last album. That by this time it was just a bare bones group compared to the 1960s, middle 60s. But it's got some great live tracks on it. It's one reason why I've always loved this album. It's for the live tracks. And the Sons of Chapman, this is their first album. It was a double album. In a lot of ways, it was sort of like Chicago Transit Authority. In fact, I got both of those albums at exactly the same time, and I think Sons of Chapman really suffered as a result from me, as a result of that, because the Chicago Transit Authority is not only the best album that Chicago ever released, it's enormously adventurous, and the combination, I mean, the only thing I can think that even comes close to it, and yet they're not the same at all, and yet it is a big band, it is a rock sound, and that would be The Child is the Father to the Man by Al Kooper, who, as far as I'm concerned, invented Blood, Sweat, and Tears, but he got kicked out too. And but it's a good album. It was always a good album. It was just nowhere near. It was a little bit more traditional in the music. Bachman Turner Overdrive. I like this group. I've always enjoyed BTO, and I don't. This is one of their. This is the second one, but the one I like. Maybe you'll see it before the video section of what I got. And I got some others here real quickly. Yeah, some Meatloaf and Robin Tower and Edgar Winter and Dickie Betts. This is my favorite Bachman Overdrive right now, and this was $3. And it's the second song on the first side. It's freaking unbelievable. And I didn't get this one for the dollar. It was $3. Now here's what I've been wanting to show you. This is it's on my plastic, goes over the album, and then I try to put all the information on it so that if I do have an auction with this, you can read about it. It says VG, probably VG plus, VG plus, or even plus plus on the second side. And the reason why I say that is because I've play graded this thing about 20 times. I love this album. It's a great album. I got this when I bought about 40 albums in a box collection. I saw the album, I saw about this part of it right here. That's all I saw. Maybe like this a part of it or something. And I went, oh wow, I know what that is. And so I bought like 40 albums, and I don't know, it's like $40. I got a few surprises, and I got this, which, this is maybe really close between Sgt. Pepper's and the Mothers of Invention, Frank Zappa, and We're Only in It for the Money, which the irony of this is that both of these albums are so important to me, and yet there is a connection between them as far as I'm concerned, and I just love it. I don't know if I still got 6 minutes. to go here. You've turned off everything by now, but I've gotten a few sweet albums that I really like a lot that I would like to show real quick. Here's some, since I'm on these are $1 albums again. Albert Collins. It's actually a really great album, and the quality is pretty good. I don't have it rated. I haven't played Brooke Benton's album, but I remember Patrick selling one fairly expensively, and I probably wouldn't have bought it had it not been for that experience. And it wasn't like I'm looking for money, but I thought, well, you know, people must like it, so I'll check it out. And I got it for $1. And I found this. I used to have, I love stuff like this. I like R&B that goes back. I like R&B better than I like the Detroit sound. To be frank, Detroit sound's great. Songwriting's unbelievable. All of the wonderful little intricacies of its quality and kind and stylization and stuff is just wonderful. But like the R&B, it's a little bit more grittier. It's more dancing on the grass or on the dirt and kicking up the dust. So I've always liked R&B better. And there's another. I found a Stone Pony. Never see these, and got it for $1. I'm really glad it plays well. I haven't really put anything on as far. Even though I'm not a huge fan of Simon and Garfunkel, I found this about a week or two ago, and I bought the box, which cost me altogether $7, which means that this cost me about a quarter. And you can see I play graded it already, and I said BG, and it's got some noise, and overall it plays great, and all this other good stuff. And I keep it for myself. Now, surprisingly, I'm going to show you this real quick. This is it's a $3 album, according to this. But usually at one of the places I buy for $1. And the second side is incredible. I mean, the whole album is wonderful. I remember when I bought it, but I'd forgotten things. And the second side, there's a long 8-9 minute song on it, and it's a jam. And that jam is at least a year and a half before the Allman Brothers actually released the Allman Brothers were released not too long after this, but the Jam Fillmore album, the double album, didn't really come out until around late 60s, early 70s, somewhere in there, 71, I can't remember. And this has a jam that, if you did, the voices are not the same, of course, but the jam itself is really Allman Brother-esque. And it's amazing this band became so country-fied, but you can hear it in the early stuff, but there was always a rock attitude in the beginning. The other day, Bill from the vinyl community, who's my buddy, he told me about this, and so I purchased the first Bugs album, which I'm really excited about. And I heard, I was at the record shop here in town, and so we played it, and he was digging on it. And this is the Rolling Stone. Patrick had one he sold pretty expensively. I got this one for $9. It sounds great. It looks great. I don't think it has a cover, it does, but it is mono. And I got it for $9. The album, I haven't listened to the whole thing, but I have listened to sections before I left the shop. Okay, now I'm stuck because I got this. And then this will probably be very close to the last one. And this is Deep Purple. I'm a big Deep Purple fan, and the thing about Deep Purple is before Deep Purple to me is the Yardbirds. After Deep Purple is Led Zeppelin. You can see historically how these things kind of all go together, but as far as I am concerned, just to leave Led Zeppelin with them and some of the later, like Ozzy Osbourne and his group, and say that they created metal is bullshit. Go back to Deep Purple. You can go back to Rumble if you want to. So there's a lot of great music that led to go back to the Kinks. But this is one of the great albums for me. Of course, I love almost all the Deep Purple albums, and I've grown to love them more, and I was always a big fan. I seem to be a bigger fan today than I used to be. So I got to cut it. I've got 47 seconds left, which means this thing is really long, but I get to see it and see how terrible I am as you know, telling people stuff about records. Have a good day.